Hi, Bill here from 30-Minute Woodshop. Thanks for joining me today, and we're going to be showing you how to build the small valet. It's a great place to carry out your keys, your wallet, your phone, those kind of things. Keep them all in one spot at the counter. I don't know about you, but I struggle with my keys sometimes. These are very easy to build. They make great gifts for Christmas or birthdays or whatever. They also have a fairly high resale value on Etsy if you decide to actually make them and sell them. These particular ones have a leather inlay, solid wood, and so people really appreciate those kind of details. And again, these are really easy to build. So keep watching and see how we do it. Why don't we get started? I'm kind of working around this little piece of leftover wood that I have, which is, see how big this thing really is. Yeah, it's 4 3/8 by 11. If you look at it, basically pretty easily fits my wallet. Enough room for my keys. Throw my phone on top, and I'm good to go. We'll have to make a few adjustments to this piece of wood, but I'm looking at something that's about 4.5 inches wide by about, what did I say it was? 4 3/8. 4 3/8 wide by about 11 inches, 10 inches long. I'll make it 10 inches, make it easy. So, first thing you got to do, guys, actually we're making it 4 1/4, so I have space left over, and I'll make it by 10 inches. So, you got to start with your dimensions. Pretty easy. I know I wanted about 2 inches roughly, 2 inches high. So, I know my basic dimensions. What I do now, I picked up these boards. These are poplar at one of the big box stores. Matter of fact, I'll probably cut in a little purchase scene. I got 2 of them. They were really straight when I bought them. This one is like really warped. So I got the last part of this warped up really bad. So I'm not going to use this one, at least for now. I'll use something else. But I'll be using this dark poplar for the box. Let's talk about the tools you need for the project today. Obviously you need sandpaper, and I'd suggest a sanding block, some way to cut the material, so a handsaw will work. You're going to need a square and a pencil, measuring device, so tape measure, some kind of finish, and if you're using power tools, hearing protection, of course eye protection. Always wear hearing protection, eye protection with power tools. I'll be using a table saw and a radial arm saw along with a compact router and a router table. Let's go split some wood. So, completed our cut. Kill the machine. Don't touch anything until the blade's completely stopped. Alright, we got our pieces. Now we're going to go cross cut. So yes, this is a radial arm saw. Freaks a lot of people out. I really don't know why. It's probably safer, if you ask me, than a table saw. As long as you don't do certain things with it, do stupid crap with it. Again, follow the directions, read the safety instructions. So we're marking these off individually at 4 1/4. We'll have to do some adjustments later on. I'll tell you, most of the guys that have been hurt with radial arm saws are doing foolish things. And oh, by the way, the setup you see here is my evacuation system for straight cuts. We have our parts cut, our sides and ends. still have all my fingers after using a radial arm saw. So basically what we're going to do is put the box together and see if it looks like something I actually like. So as I look at this, now this is a personal perspective. Okay, for what I'm trying to do, this looks a little bit high for me. I don't know that I like it being as high as it is. So 2 inches is probably not exactly what I want. I want something maybe 1 inch. So I'm looking for something that's more of a valet or a tray, not a box. And right now it's 2 1/8 inches. Well, and the idea really is to make this as simple as possible. So I don't like how high that is. I really want it to be a lot narrower vertically. From a design standpoint, that's really what sings to me. So anytime you're doing this kind of stuff, guys, think about what the design needs to look like and what you want the design to be. All right, I'm giving you some ideas here. Take them on your own and make them your own. If you want 2 inches and you want something this deep, that's great. From my standpoint, I throw my wallet and keys in there. I can get them out pretty easy, but if I throw things that are like change and my pocket knife and stuff, I've got to go digging around for it. I don't really like that idea. So I'm going to cut these down. I'll be back in a minute. Back to the table saw, making some additional scrap. Let's see if this really works for me. And quite frankly, that looks a lot better. Much easier for me to get my hands into. At the end of this, I'll probably round over inside and outside. But again, this is all butt joints. The reason for butt joints in this, doesn't have to take a lot of load. I kind of like the idea of the butt joints and the way they look, because the ends are going to be darker than the sides once I stain it up or put varnish paint on it. So it should be kind of cool, but looks good right now at this side. So I'm only at actually 1 1/8. I didn't cut it all down to 1 inch. So now we got to get busy and start gluing this puppy up. You can see how simple this is in a 30-minute project. We're ready to glue up the valet. Did a quick test of the parts to make sure they all fit. Looks good. Clamps are set, glue's here. We're going to use these, which are F-style clamps. They're a little fussy. I prefer Bessie Tradesman. They're a little easier to use sometimes, but I have these close to hand. So first thing we're going to do, lay these out, throw some glue on them. Now I want you to understand this is real time, so you guys know exactly what's happening here. And when I say 30 minutes, that's what I mean. So we got all those done. Let's get these stood up. A little more glue. Oops, I almost put it in the wrong corner. Okay. That'll slide around a bit as we clamp it, so. Once you get some initial tension on it, bring the corners together with your fingers. Pretty easy to do. You're not putting a lot of tension on this, just some. Just enough to hold it together. By the way, the glue I'm using right now is a Tight Bond 3, which is a waterproof glue. Happens to be what I have on hand. Matter of fact, I just got back from the hardware store. I should have bought some other stuff. So, let's put the next one on. he's done. So all we're going to do is move this off the bench a little bit, throw a clamp on here and there, just to keep the firm pressure on it. Now she's going to dry for about 2 hours. I'm going to actually let it dry overnight and come back to it tomorrow because it's pretty late here. But normally let the stuff dry for about 2 hours and you're ready to go to work on it. And there you have it. So that's ready to go. We'll lay it over on the side, let it dry out for the next couple hours, and we'll come back to it later. So this router, I already have chucked a trim bit. It's a bottom following pattern bit, so you can see the bearing. So one of the reasons I have so many routers laying around is because I don't have to re-chuck all these different bits that I commonly use. Makes for a lot faster operation. I just pick a router up, plug it in, and go. This one's already set. We only have a couple of, or one side I got to trim off here, so that's pretty decent. The rest of it, I'll just sand flat. Should be good. You'll notice a couple things. One, I have a pad down here. It's a non-slip pad, and I also have a clamp. Make sure your material is clamped down so whenever you start routing, it doesn't slide around on you. It can cause huge injuries. Before you get started, make sure you always have hearing protection, eye protection, any other PPE you think you need. Also read and follow all the directions for any power tools you're going to use. And on that note, it's going to get really noisy here in a second. So this is why I like power tools. I love hand tools too, but power tools make things so fast that I can get in and out and get things done quickly. I love hand tools, but they just take so darn long. So let's move on to do some sanding. First thing I hope you notice is that the tools are put away. Always put your tools away. Always keep your bench top as clean as possible. I know it's tough sometimes, even for me. But if you put your tools away, you'll always be able to find them. It took me a very long time to figure that out. Once you do that, you cut the amount of time you waste dramatically. So, moving on. For sanding, I have a piece of repurposed 6-inch sanding paper here for my disc sander. I'm using it on a block. This is already pre-machined wood, so I don't really need to go any worse than 220, like any harder grip, like 180 or 100 or 150. A lot of guys will tell you got to walk through all the grits, and you don't have to do that. This is already pre-machined. The surface finish is already really good. Only place you have to worry about is these cut edges, and they'll come down pretty fast with the 220. Next, after this, if you wanted, it was 320, but don't go over 320. By that time, you start to close the wood pores, and it won't accept the finish very well. So that's really something that most people don't realize, that if you have a sharp corner, basically the finish won't stick to it, and it'll chip, and it'll look really bad. It'll be really thin too. So this won't take very long. If you did it right, there's almost no sanding in the corners. You don't have to worry about trying to even them up. They are a little off. You might have to put a little more work into it. But after a minute or two, you're done. So, as I said, you got to round the corners. Doesn't take a lot to round the corners, but all your corners need to be rounded off. No sharp corners. This bottom, though, I think I'm going to treat the bottom a little bit differently. I'm going to put a cove, I think, underneath it, so it looks more like it's floating. Get it off the. It'll give it a visual as it's off the table. So that's all done. Make sure you get the inside. Okay, there you have it. Pretty good. Give you a real quick look at that. And all I use on here is a piece of plywood. I use plywood for a reason, and it's just stuck to the outside because when I put the cove in here, you won't see it. Okay. Now, ready to move on to making a cove for this thing. At the router table, we already have a cove bit set up. This is why I use these kind of things already preset. I use them quite a bit. This happens to be a rocker cove bit. So as it's set up, it's going to be cutting out a cove out of this. I'm going to give it a quick try. It's going to get noisy, so you're only going to see a portion of this. I'm going to turn the mic off. Well, the router made pretty short work of this undercut. And if you can see, we left a nice shadow line here. A couple things we have to do to finish that up, even though that was a fairly new bit. We're going to run a sandpaper over a dowel through this. Pretty quick. A few times, make sure that there's no burrs or anything. And then we're going to get on to laying down some finish. So, a couple different finishes I have here. These are all Minwax. This is a special walnut and a dark walnut. I'm going to try something out here. I kind of want to use dark walnut in this groove, alright, where I've routed. Primarily to give darken the shadow line, so when you're looking at it, this will be even darker than just shadow. Which, quite frankly, it's not all that deep. So we'll give it a try. I'm not quite certain it's going to work out that way. If it doesn't, then I'll have to put dark on all of it, which is okay. A little sanding after this is done. Now, I'm not waiting for any of this to dry either. A lot of times they'll tell you to wait for it to dry. In most cases you probably should. But I'm not looking for a fine finish on this. This is really just to accentuate that shadow line, so I want it dark. Actually, if I had ebony, I'd probably use that in its place. So as I said, pretty quick. bottom out too. I'm going to spill this stuff. What a disaster that'd be. This is just in case someone turns it over. It'll all have a fairly uniform finish on it. So now I've got that. Seal this back up again. Do a quick wipe down. So what I want to do now is do a real quick sanding on the edges and the sides. So they did get some on the edge. This will take it off pretty fast. We'll have to get wiped down again. Now I'm going to a different stain, a little bit lighter. I haven't quite decided yet if I'm going to, I don't know if you can see this. This piece of plywood actually has a spalted surface, so it looks really nice in here. I'm not 100% certain if I'm going to throw leather in it or not now that I see it. We'll see once we get a little further down the pike. See how this stain looks. This is a special walnut, so it's a much lighter finish. When we get done with that, we're going to wipe on some poly. Now on screen, you probably can't see the difference between these two. It's going to look, from your standpoint, probably really close. But in reality, it's about a half a shade or maybe a shade lighter. Which is a pretty big difference when you're seeing it firsthand. So one of the things I want you to realize is that you can get a project done pretty fast. That's a pretty nice project. Okay, it's not fine furniture. I know there are guys out there when they do this, it's absolutely totally awesome. But those are the guys that have been at it for 30 or 40 years as a business, whereas me, this is just a fun project. So there we go. So one of the things I noticed here, I was kind of sloppy with the glue. So we don't have an even finish in here. I can fix that one of two ways. I could use a gel stain. All right, the gel stain will actually lay on top of it, as opposed to trying to sink into the wood. That would correct that. I'm not going to bother. Actually, what I'm going to do is I decided I'm going to put the leather in for sure now. You probably can't see the tone difference between here and, yeah, you can, here and here. But it does darken it up enough that when it's sitting down, it makes that a much deeper shadow line. So, we're going to move on to wiping some varnish on this. And again, all I'm going to do is wipe it on. I'm putting a thin coat of varnish on it to seal it up. It's not seeing heavy use. All it's going to be doing is sitting on the counter with my changing keys and those kinds of things in it. So it's not like it's going to be seeing a lot of heavy movement and that type of thing. I'm not going to put anything on the bottom, by the way, so something gets left over there. But again, just wipe it on real quick. Try and make sure you get it everywhere. In other words, don't leave any dry spots when you're wiping it on. It'll dry itself out and it gets absorbed. Now you notice I didn't let the stain dry. Move this a little further out there so I don't knock it over. And like I said, when I said 30-minute project, this really is a 30-minute project. Might take a little bit longer actually once I start working on the leather. But I'm cutting the leather out of a purse, so it's salvage. So the salvage operation will take me about 10 or 15 minutes. Okay, done with that. Make sure you always reseal your paints and stains. It's very easy to knock this stuff over. Now all I'm going to do is wipe down the piece. Now there shouldn't be any finish in the bottom. All there is in the bottom right now is just the stain. This is just putting on a thin coat. And that's just enough to protect it. And 99% done. Actually, if I was a little more careful with the glue, when I did the glue up, you wouldn't see these white areas inside. I wouldn't need to even put anything in. Normally, these anyway, I would put in the leather, or I put in a felt, like green felt that goes really nice with this, or a dark royal blue felt. Costs you a few pennies to go get it at one of the fabric stores. If you don't feel comfortable, guys, ask your wife or girlfriend to do that for you. So this will take about, totally, with the whole thing, it'll take about another hour to dry. But pretty much ready to go. Now let's take a quick look at salvaging the leather. So I have a purse here, my wife's purse. My wife no longer wants this purse. So guys, make sure whenever you talk to your wife or girlfriend, you pick a purse that they're not using. They get really irritated if you use one that's one of their favorites. Remember I told you about this Gerber? It's really handy. So bear with me for a minute or two while I try and cut this thing open. The other thing is, if you really want some of this stuff, you can find it at Salvation Army. You can pick up leather purses for $1 or $2, $3. Go on the days when they have their special sales, and when you get them, you can get all kinds of colors. It's a great way to get leather without having to pay an arm and a leg. I have a couple of hides behind me rolled up that I've used for other projects, and let me tell you, even factory second hides with blemishes are pretty darn expensive. Whereas this was, I hate to say it was free because my wife paid for it, or I paid for it, whatever. We paid for it. She's decided she no longer wants it though. so I'm going to repurpose it, which makes me feel better. I'm not throwing it in the dump. Seriously, this Gerber knife is like godsend. It's got a really nice inner liner too. It's sewn in, of course. So let's see if we can even. Oh, that should work. That's gonna look nice in there. I gotta get the inner liner out first. So this is gonna take a little bit. It's at about 15 minutes, probably by the time I get done. So we'll be back in a bit. The leather came out a lot easier than I anticipated, and it's actually a beautiful piece of leather. It's about a mil and a quarter thick, beautiful suede on one side, and a nice finish, probably aniline dyed on the other side, and kind of a mahogany red. So it's going to go really nice in here. We're going to lay it out real quick. Again, boy, I tell you what, having an X-Acto knife in your pocket is really nice. This is a metal edge ruler, in case you're wondering what it is. It makes it easier. And of course, a self-healing cutting surface. Save you some time. I'm going to cut this stuff offline. Back in a bit. Well, to wrap this project up, here's the finished product. Turned out really well. I'm looking around for my glue. I wanted to let you know that what I used to glue this down was some Tight Bond Ultimate Wood Glue. I could have used rubber cement or contact cement or anything else. That's what I had to hand. Really good for holding the leather down to the wood. Like I said, it turned out really well. And as I pointed out before, phone, wallet, keys, anything else I want to throw in there, and it kind of corrals my stuff on the counter so I can find it. I don't have my wife worrying about where my keys are. Anyway, hey, thanks for joining me in this episode for a valet tray. Appreciate you being here. There's links in the bottom to some of the stuff that I used. If you're interested, they are affiliate links. I do get a little bit of money from each of those if you purchase something through that link, which I appreciate in supporting this channel. And all that being said, folks, see you next episode, and good making.